When I first got the letter and I opened it and I started reading it, and I was like, oh my goodness. I was like, it felt great that somebody noticed it, what we were doing. It was just amazing the way it happened, because I did not expect that. Because I thought nobody would notice it. It was like a big push for me. It was like, it makes me continue doing it.
Welcome to Crazy Good Turns. This is the podcast that recognizes and celebrates people who do great things for others. And I'm your host, Frank Blake. Instead of a guest today, we have Brian Sabin, our Crazy Good Turns producer, in our virtual studio because we're kicking off Crazy Good Turns' second $50 recognition program. Welcome, Brian.
Well, thank you, Frank. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great. We did our first $50 recognition program in April 2020, which was just as the COVID pandemic was starting. We asked our listeners to send us notes on people who'd done kind and thoughtful things for them or for their community, their work colleagues or neighbors or whatever. They'd send that in, and then we'd send that person a $50 gift card, the person who'd done the wonderful thing. Along with the $50 gift card, we'd send a letter explaining why the person was receiving the card, saying that so-and-so had nominated them for having done a good thing, and here's the $50 card. When we announced the program, honestly, I don't think either Brian and I really knew what to expect. Would people respond? Would they be indifferent or maybe even suspicious of a free $50 gift card? Sounds too good to be true, and often things that are too good to be true are too good to be true, but this actually is true and good. And in fact, what happened is the program exceeded our expectations. We got a terrific response. We sent out over $27,000 in gift cards. We received nominations from 45 states and Washington, D.C. And as great as those numbers are, what's even more important is what the program showed about you, our listeners, and showed about our communities and colleagues, and about the value of recognizing and celebrating others who are doing good things. So we've decided to repeat it. And before Brian goes through the details of how the program works, let me describe for you what I think we learned from the 2020 program. First, and this seems obvious, but it came through clearly in the responses we received, there are two important elements of this program. There's the recognition given to the person who's done something kind or thoughtful, and this is important, there is the positive feeling generated by taking the time out of your busy day to thank someone. Here's how one of our listeners describes that.
I'm Rich Armstrong. I live in upstate New York, actually in the remote areas of the Adirondacks. And my story is really about my aunt who was being cared for by a special caretaker who took a personal interest in my aunt. So Anita is her name, and up in the area of the Adirondacks where my aunt lived, it's not too easy to find a caretaker. But she would come by pretty much every day, and she had to every day come by and take care of my aunt by, preparing meals, cleaning, that sort of thing. But she really developed a personal relationship with my aunt, a friendship, as my aunt would call it, a real friendship. And to this day, she continues to visit my aunt in a nursing home. I got a little emotional as I was thinking about it, as I was writing it. I got a little bit emotional thinking, it made me think about what she was doing, and it mattered, and I just appreciated it. So I just felt, I felt a deeper connection a little bit because I thought about it. I felt great. It was kind of one of those, it made my day, right? I think it made her day, and it made my day. I mean, we're talking about this, whatever it is, 2 years later, and I distinctly remember it. Right. And, there's not that many things I can think back 2 years where I distinctly remember a day.
I think Rich's clip captures such an important point. That thing that you remember 2 years later, because it is such a powerful thing to take time and to thoughtfully thank someone. And I think one of the things that makes Crazy Good Turns unusual is our listeners, all of you, understand that. I mean, after all, that's why you take your time to listen to this program. And it's also why I think the $50 recognition program was so successful. You recognize the importance of honoring others through the time you take to listen to their stories. The second thing that I think we learned was going through all the different nominations, it was clear that none, and I mean none, of the recipients of the $50 gift card expected to receive anything. They didn't expect to get $50 out of the blue, and they didn't even expect to be noticed. Being noticed, and being noticed for doing a good thing, is its own powerful, positive experience. And we have another great clip from one of the people who was recognized in 2020 that reinforces that.
My name is Ramiro Galvam. I'm from Augusta, Georgia. Me and my family owns a few restaurants here in town. When COVID hits, the schools around here start closing down, and we noticed that some part of the community, might not be able to access, food for the younger kids. And we decided to step in. We come from a background where, we relied on school as well, to eat. And I figured I was like, well, we have the means to do it, let's do it. You know what I mean? Because back then, when we didn't have what we have right now, people actually help us as well. So I was like, well, whenever I got the needs or whatever, I'm going to do the same thing. We were going to do it only for so many months. But then the schools, didn't reopen, and it was just, they extended longer. So we decided to even extend their hours, a little longer. We had 3 locations at that point. Right now we only had 2. We had to close one down due to the, pandemic, unfortunately. When I first got the letter and I opened it and I started reading it, and I was like, oh my goodness. I was like, it felt great that somebody noticed it, what we were doing. It was just amazing how, the way it happened, because I did not expect that. Well, nobody from my team expected, you know what I mean? Because I thought nobody would notice it. When I got the letter, it was like a big push for me. It was like, it makes me continue doing it.
So I think Ramiro captures the essence of this in that last statement, that when you're recognized for something that you've done that's good for others, that encourages you to do more. And that's really, in the end, a lot of what this podcast is all about. Then the third thing, I don't know so much as this was a learning as a validation, is I'm a believer in the importance of the actual physical thing that you receive. For those who know me, they know I write a lot of cards, a lot of handwritten notes, because there's a value in having that physical evidence of the gratitude expressed. And we structured the program that way so that you get a physical gift card and you get a physical letter that summarizes the good deed that you did. And I was pleased that when we heard back from some of the folks who participated in the 2020 program, the importance of that physical evidence came through. We've got another clip that captures that.
My name's Michelle Voles. I'm a coordinator here in Orange County for the Nation Spirituality Project. We provide spiritual companionship to women in transition, women in shelters and in recovery. I've been volunteering with homeless shelters for a few years, and I realize I'm an outsider, but the women who are inside, who know each other, are truly the best people to minister to each other. Their stories are pretty harsh and brutal sometimes, but so many have able to overcome that, kind of risen and to find their purpose in serving each other. So that just really inspired me. I don't think I could have overcome. Laura's at one of the shelters that I go to regularly, and with the pandemic, the women's shelter completely shut down to protect themselves. So she stepped up as the cook. Most of the food's donated, but she got real creative about it. Oh, and then in the middle of this, the oven went down, and they didn't want to call in a repair person. So she was being very creative, trying to make meals for a quite large crowd and doing it with humor and grace. Honestly, I almost forgot because it was 2 years ago. So I reached out to Laura. I texted her a few days ago, and we had a phone call 2 nights ago. She had saved this letter that you sent her, and she went through her pile of stuff, sent me a photo of it, and sent it. It meant so much to her. I remember she called me at the time, and she was so excited about this gift card. And I don't think she even remembered what she did with it, but it was that letter that she saved. And she said, I want to keep it. And I mean, how wonderful is that to have a physical thank you, a physical recognition. So that was important to her.
That clip captures the importance of the physical letter and the card, and so I'm pleased that was something that was validated by our program. The fourth learning, this is, I think, an important one I hope that all of our listeners think about, is because this was during the pandemic, we got lots of really powerful stories and people who were doing amazing things for their neighbors, people who were knitting masks, delivering food, nurses in hospitals, doctors in hospitals, truly the community all pulling together in an incredibly difficult time. And that was very important, and it's hugely important to recognize those acts of kindness and thoughtfulness. We also got some letters, though, and these in their own way were as powerful to me as some of the grander acts of kindness that were just on small kindnesses. And one of my favorites was a nomination that came in from a woman that was going to her daughter's bus driver, and how her daughter, who has special needs, was very anxious getting on the bus during the pandemic, and how this bus driver would reach out and talk to her and make her laugh and even stop occasionally and take her out for ice cream. And you think of those small kindnesses and how they echo through our lives. And those too are worth recognizing and thanking. And as I was thinking about that, I saw there's a great author, James Clear. He does a blog that I'd recommend to all of you. And he printed a poem by Danusha Lamaris that's called Small Kindnesses. And it talks about how far we are now as a people from the fire and the tribe, but what still knits us together are these small kindnesses. And so I would encourage you, when you're thinking about people to nominate and thank, that you don't think this is someone who has to have ended world hunger, but rather someone who's just behaviorally helped knit us all together with small kindnesses. And that too came through from a lot of the nominations that came in. And finally, because I did spend a lot of time in my life at Home Depot, I was thrilled that we got a lot of nominations from Home Depot associates about other Home Depot associates, because that's very much the culture of Home Depot, the recognition and celebration of people. And within that, I was particularly thrilled. There are sort of validation points that you get for a program like this. And the best validation point was some of the people who were nominated and whom I know well. Crystal Hanlon, who runs the Northern Division at Home Depot, got a wonderful recognition note where the person ended it by saying if she could nominate Crystal for sainthood, she would. And that's right. So it was great to see Crystal recognized. And also just two of my favorite leaders in New England, Lori Corelli and Kevin Chamberlain. Kevin nominated his colleague, Lori, appropriately for recognition. And it just feels good when you know that some of the people being recognized by the program are, in fact, just outstanding people who deserve recognition. So I'm very excited that we're going to do the program again. I hope we blow through the $27,000 level. I hope we get to double that. And I hope we all have fun with it. Although we want to have fun with it, we do have some rules that go along with it. Most of them are the same rules as we had the last time. Some of them, though, are informed by the learnings of the first time through the program. And for that, I'm going to turn it over to Brian.
Yes, absolutely. The way this program works is pretty simple. If you're listening to this episode, you can send a $50 thank you award to just about anyone. All you need to do is the following. 1, go to crazygoodturns.org/thank you. That's crazygoodturns.org/thank you, all one word. There, you'll find a form to fill out. In that form, you're going to need to know the person's name, an address where we can send the award, and most important of all, their story. When you give us a great, detailed story of what that person did for you that was so kind, or why that person is so inspiring, that is very helpful to our team. And it means we can send the award much more quickly. You know, sometimes we get letters that are like, I'd really like to nominate Bill because Bill is a nice guy. We certainly believe you. We bet Bill is great, but we need to know, why is Bill great? What does he do for you or his neighbors or whoever? When you provide those details, we can fulfill the award right away. If you don't, we have to reach back out and ask for more information, and it's just a longer process. Anyway, outside of providing the story, there are just 4 rules. Rule number 1, no self-nominations. You know, sometimes in the past, we've received messages from people that said, I'm a nice person, I think I deserve $50. We agree that you're a nice person and that nice people have value. However, the point of this is to recognize others and what they do for us. So for us all. So please, no self-nominations. Take the time to recognize somebody else. Rule number 2, no group nominations, right? So if your local high school football team goes through your neighborhood and shovels off driveways, you could thank the kid who shoveled your driveway, but we can't send an award to every single player on that team. Rule number 3, no international nominations. And our listeners in Canada and Australia and beyond, we are so sorry, but just due to mailing constraints, we can't fulfill these awards overseas. So sorry about that, but no international nominations. And finally, rule number 4, anyone can nominate up to 3 people max. So if you are hearing this and you want to nominate your neighbor and a person at your church and your mechanic, that's great. Those are 3 people that we can send it to straight away, but that's the quota for any one person. We need to make sure there's enough of these awards to go around so that other people can get it to do it too. That's it. Those are the guidelines for our program. We can't wait to hear your stories.
Perfect. And I'm going to put you on the spot, Brian. So you weren't prepared for this. But what was either your favorite story or your favorite element from the prior program?
Gosh, my favorite story from the prior program, it was sent to us by a listener named Abby Lerner. Abby sent us the story of her husband. They were expecting a child at the time, and COVID just hit, and we all remember COVID was strange and scary, and people were afraid to leave their house. Her husband, when he was an educator, he had to work in front of people, and then when schools closed down, he didn't do what many people, including me, did, and in terms of like hiding inside and using grocery delivery services. He went out there and he delivered groceries to neighbors, and he waited on his wife hand and foot, and just did the kind of things that we saw kind and exemplary people do during that time. So I always think of that, and I think of him. They sent us a photo of him like dropping off groceries on people's front doorsteps, and I just think about that because it was such a great example, and there were so many other stories like that in that moment in time. But Abby's husband is the one that always comes to mind to me.
All right. Thank you, Brian. That's terrific. And I do believe this program is as good an expression of why Crazy Good Turns exists as anything else. We are here to celebrate good acts. We are here also, I hope, to increase your appreciation of what's going on around you that is good and worthwhile, an opportunity for you to exercise what one of our former guests would say is your gratitude muscle. So just as Brian said, when you're thinking about writing a nomination, to actually take the time, what did this person do that I'm so grateful for? So it's important to exercise that gratitude muscle, and it's actually fun and enjoyable. So I hope you have fun with it. I hope you enjoy it. Well, thank you for listening to this episode. And as I say, I hope you will participate in the $50 recognition program. I thank, as always, our producer, Brian Sabin, who you heard from today. I thank our audio engineers, Stephen Key and Score, our associate producer, Megan Hanlon, and Leslie Nunn, who solves all things for Crazy Good Turns. Thank you very much, and look forward to our next episode.